Because you've got, okay. one day, when the glory comes, it will be ours. It will be ours. One day, when the war is won, we will be sure. We will be sure. Oh, glory, 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 glory. One day, when the glory comes, it will be ours. It will be ours. Oh, one day, when the war is won, we will be sure. We will be sure. Oh, glory, 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 glory. Now the war is not over. Victory isn't won. We've got to finish till the war is done. We'll cry. Oh, we'll cry glory. Oh, glory. We'll cry glory. Oh, glory. Oh, glory. Oh, glory. Oh, one day, when the glory comes, it will be ours. It will be ours. Oh, one day, when the war is won, we will be sure. We've got to be sure. Oh, glory.
Hallelujah, hallelujah. And Brother Brandon, if you could stay there in this spirit of glory, and as you remain in that space for this moment of opening prayer, we ask everyone who is watching with us to see this moment of prayer as a movement of the Psalms. When we read the book of Psalms, when we hear the laments and we hear the cries and we hear the call that is uttered forth, we hear expressions in song, we hear expressions in prayer, and we hear expressions through the form of poetry. And I'm thankful for the organizing committee for inviting me in this moment to recite both a prayer and poem. And so in this moment, as we lift our hearts to God, and as we think about the ways that the Word of God and the presence of God's people move in our lives, we ask you, Lord, to move in ways so dynamic that feeling of being static and not moving is something that leaves our consciousness. Remind us that we were molded in righteousness, to remind the world that we are truly blessed when we learn to love our neighbors as ourselves, and when we recognize that there is no harm in oftentimes putting others before ourselves, when we recognize that we have been given the gift to uplift, the gift of being able to uplift and become ones who shine brighter than the light of a billion suns, when we remind the world that the reason that we have come is that we shall show your glory as we tell the story of what freedom looks like, sounds like, feels like as the shackles are broken and minds are set free to be released from the pain and released from the guilt and released from the shame of recognizing that you came that we might have life and life more abundantly. So it is with the profundity of your word that we are asking that this prayer be heard as a sacred call so that all of us might answer and recognize that we must be the answer to prayers. And that's why you have gathered us here, and that's why you gather us there in the far reaches. So God, we are asking that you help us become mobilized not only as the most inspirational speeches, but recognizing that the speeches that come from your heart will allow us to be divine sparks. And maybe, just maybe, we might be that ark of safety. We might be that ark of freedom. And Lord God, as we become that ark of freedom, remind us that we have been called to reach them and those, and we who are recognizing that we must work on behalf of beloved community, because when we come to you in prayer, you allow us to understand what it means to be synergized as the most amazing unity where the circle of life is unbroken and our hopes begin to rise in the eyes of our children, whom we are rearing so that they are nearing those moments where the truth inside of them comes alive. So tonight, God, we offer our hearts and our minds as fertile ground so that sacred sound of freedom might abound as we recognize that in part, the right to vote is an expression of hope, and expressions of hope become when the body politic comes together to help us understand that we can weather any storm if we choose our journey in this life as a recalibration of norms, so that you can remind us that as the body of Christ, we have been put here to be your love, your hope, your justice in human form. As the glory comes, as the glory comes, as the glory, your glory comes.
Good evening, Ray of Hope members and friends. What a joy it is to welcome you to our Legislative and Community Engagement Forum, sponsored by the Social Justice Ministry of the Ray of Hope Christian Church, under the very capable leadership of Mary Margaret Hale, and also our Minister of Outreach, the Reverend Kenneth Rice. In November of 2020, Georgia helped cast the deciding vote to make Joe Biden our president. And we also determined in a runoff in January that Reverend Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff would be elected to the Senate, a black man and a Jewish man. African Americans and other people of color made this happen. It was the faith community and other activist groups who helped rally the troops to win and turn Georgia blue. Now, as you can imagine, there were some people who were not very happy with this. They didn't like the fact that African Americans and other people of color would exercise the right that had been denied them for years and suppressed, to have this major victory, not only for Georgia, but for the nation. And so, legislators representing 49 states introduced 400, did you hear me, 400 voter suppression bills to ensure that this would never happen again. And Georgia led the way by passing SB 202, seeking to suppress the African American and other people of color's vote. On March 25th, 2021, Governor Kemp signed it into law behind closed doors. and has been touting ever since that it was a good thing to do for the state of Georgia to ensure that we do not have voter fraud in our election process. Well, I'm happy to say that this is the opportunity for us to get the real truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. We need to understand as a people on the front lines that this is a fight. But we have some awesome leaders here tonight who will help us understand what the fight is all about. I'm not discouraged. I am greatly encouraged, as a matter of fact. I've told you before, it's a fight, but we're up to the fight. Baby, we've been fighting all of our lives. And our ancestors, mothers and fathers and others have come before us. Glory! And it's because of them that we have to stand sure-footed and take on the fight. We have to be strategic, though. Wise as serpents and harmless as doves. I believe that's biblical. We will win. I am delighted to have friends such as Pastor Lee May, Helen Butler, Georgia State Senator Emmanuel Jones, and Georgia State Representative B. Wynn here with us tonight. I'm also excited because in the audience we have Commissioner Larry Jones, who is our good friend and always with us. So sit back and enjoy this experience. I promise you, you'll never be the same again.
And welcome to our Legislative and Community Empowerment Forum. This evening, I have the joy and the privilege of introducing our moderator for tonight's discussion. Pastor Lee May II is a former elected official in DeKalb County, Georgia. Pastor Lee May was first elected as a commissioner in 2006. He served in that role until he was appointed as interim chief executive officer of DeKalb County by then Governor Nathan Deal in 2013. Pastor Lee May is also a graduate from Emory University Candler School of Theology, where he received a Master of Divinity degree, and of the historic Clark Atlanta University, where he received a degree in business. Pastor May is a former small business owner, having owned an independent movie theater located in Lithonia, Georgia. He is also the author of My God, My Politics, a discussion on faith and politics. Pastor May uses his personal experiences in both worlds to bring clarity for the layperson, telling them that their faith, in fact, can and should inform their politics. He writes that the people of faith have every right to inject their faith into the political discourse of this nation. While he has pursued many different areas of passion in business and politics, Pastor May knew deep down that there was a draw to full-time ministry. Therefore, in 2017, Pastor Lee May answered the call with his wife and a small yet powerful team and started the Transforming Faith Church in the heart of DeKalb County, Georgia. The ministry is committed to helping people experience transformation in every area of their lives. Pastor Lee May most enjoys spending time with his college sweetheart, Robin, and their three beautiful children, Ryan, Reagan, and Riley. Ray of Hope, at this time, please welcome our moderator, Pastor Lee May.
Thank you, Reverend Stevens. It is truly an honor and a privilege to be here with you on this evening. Ray of Hope, you all have a rock star of a pastor and someone who I love to life. And the fact that you would have the vision to have something that is a little bit out of the ordinary in terms of what you would see within the walls of a church. She has the vision to bring you forward a legislative and Community Empowerment Forum that's talking about real world issues, real life issues, issues that are challenging us each and every day. And so I want to thank my friend, my leader. When she says jump, I say how high. When she says go, I say where. I don't even look to see which direction because I trust her that much. So Ray of Hope, y'all who are watching through social media, through all of the chats, y'all put like a hand clap emoji, lift up your hands in the comment section, put a little heart in the comments, show your love for your pastor, my pastor, Dr. Cynthia Hale. It really is an honor to be here on this evening. Now, y'all, I'm excited because we have a rock star of a pastor, but we have a rock star of a panel here on this evening. And people who have been committed to the people, who have been committed through their particular areas of influence and of power, that have been intentional about doing what is right and what is good for the people. And so this evening, I'm ecstatic because we have three people who I've worked with closely or watched from afar, and I've just been smiling, grinning from ear to ear, just to know that I would have the privilege, the honor to moderate this panel discussion tonight. And so before I jump into the biographies, I want you all to just be thoughtful about the topic of discussion for this evening. The forum focus is voting rights. Now, we've seen all throughout the nation, and particularly Georgia being ground zero, we've seen issues of voting rights that have come forward almost daily in terms of what people are doing or not doing to either open up the vote or close the vote down. And then as I was driving here this afternoon, I was thinking about the whole concept of voting, and kind of this little phrase, I don't know really where it came from. I guess it was the Holy Spirit, came to me this evening. And when you're thinking about elections, elections are not about preserving the power of politicians. It's about protecting the power of the people. Now, if we can kind of embrace that framework for this evening in our discussion, I think people will understand why people are fighting diligently to open up the election process, the voting process. And Dr. Hale and myself, we have been fighting arm to arm, just holding arms, just making our voices heard, to tell our leaders, our elected officials, I don't care if you have an R, a D, an I, or whatever behind your name, letting them know that we believe that the vote is sacred. We're in the church this evening, right?
Yes.
Can somebody say amen? Say amen in the chat. We are in the church. We believe the vote is sacred. And we also embrace any effort that there is to expand the vote, to give greater opportunities for people to take this right, freely and be able to access the election box freely and fairly. But we also come against, like we're coming against the enemy, we come against any efforts to restrict, to block, to make it more difficult for people to vote. So I just wanted everybody to know the framework from which I am talking as a moderator today. And I truly believe that those who sit on this panel on this evening feel the same way. So let's jump right into their bios on this evening. Now, I have the privilege of introducing my friend. And I was actually talking about her today as I was driving around the city today. It seemed like I've been in my car all day. But I had the privilege of meeting Miss Helen Butler.
Yes.
And I was trying to calculate how many years ago, but I believe it was 17 years ago.
Yes.
It was about 17 years ago I had an opportunity to meet her at one of the Tuesday afternoon meetings with the People's Agenda, with the Georgia Coalition for the People's Agenda, as we would listen intently to our leader, Reverend Dr. Joseph Lowry, just give wisdom. And I'll tell a little bit about myself then. I was 17 years ago, so I was a bit younger, and I don't know if I ever told him that, but the first time I came to a meeting, I had no idea who Dr. Lowry was. Had no idea. And so I'm walking into this room, but by the time I left, I was like, almost like how they talked about Jesus after they left the room with him. Who is this man? And where did he get this wisdom from? Helen has served as executive director of the Georgia Coalition for the People's Agenda, an advocacy organization comprised of representatives from the human rights, civil rights, environmental, labor, women, young professionals, youth, elected officials, peace, and justice groups throughout the state of Georgia. And that organization was founded by our great and late leader, Dr. Joseph E. Lowry. She was able to increase the membership of the organization to over 60 statewide and local organizations, as well as promote collaborative issue, campaign, organizing activities throughout Georgia. In keeping with the People's Agenda commitment to social justice issues, she has formed strategic alliances to improve quality of life for communities of color. She serves as the convener of the Black Women's Roundtable of Georgia as an affiliate of the National Coalition on Black Civic Participation to promote health and wellness, economic security, education, and global empowerment for Black women. She serves on the Morgan County Board of Elections, and in 2013, she was appointed to serve on the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights as a member of the Georgia Advisory Committee. She currently serves on the City of Atlanta's 2020 Complete Count Committee and the State Civic Engagement Tables Complete Count Committee. Here's one fact that I didn't know about Helen. As one of the first 50 African-American students to attend the University of Georgia after the integration of the school by Charlene Hunter Galt and Hamilton Holmes, she received a Bachelor's of Business Administration from the University of Georgia with a major in accounting. She also studied and served as a recruiter of the Masters of Public Administration program at the University of Georgia. She was certified as an issue campaign organizer by the Midwest Training Academy in 2000. I had to read all that, but I will say this. One thing that had me smiling from ear to ear is when the Senate brought a hearing here to Georgia, and the country, and I would say the world, was looking. And Helen Butler was one of the few people that was called in to provide testimony to that committee. And you all, I was smiling from ear to ear, watching her present and answer all those questions. You made us proud. And I felt good to be able to call Helen my friend.
Thank you.
So proud of you and so proud of the work that you do. Next up, couched in the middle of these two beautiful women, is Senator Emanuel Jones. He's a Democrat. He was first elected to the Georgia Senate from Georgia's 10th District in 2004. Senator Jones represents Southwest DeKalb and Henry County. He is the current chairman of the Martin Luther King Jr. Advisory Council and formerly served as chairman of the Georgia Legislative Black Caucus for 2 consecutive legislative sessions. Senator Jones is a member of the Banking and Financial Institutions, Economic Development and Tourism, Interstate Cooperation, Special Judiciary and Retirement Committees. Senator Jones is president of the Legacy Automotive Group, which includes Legacy Ford of McDonough, Legacy Real Estate of Columbus, New Legacy Real Estate in Chandler and Chandler Real Estate. He's a businessman.
Yes.
Hope you get a car from him one day. I don't know if I could say that, but I've said it. It is what it is now. Senator Jones is a graduate, was class valedictorian, and I had to put this in there, from West Fulton High School in Atlanta, Georgia. I won't say the year you graduated, but he was a valedictorian. I didn't know that about you. I knew you were brilliant, but clearly it showed up in your academics as well. Senator Jones currently resides in Ellenwood, Georgia with his wife. This is the most important of everything that I've just said. He currently resides in Ellenwood, Georgia, with his wife, Gloria, sons, Emmanuel II and Elam, and daughter, Imani. He is a deacon, he's a church man, a man of faith, of the Shiloh Baptist Church in McDonough, Georgia. Ladies and gentlemen, Senator Emmanuel Jones. Welcome, Senator Jones. And finally, last but not least, we have B. Wynn. She is one of 5 daughters, born to a resourceful mother and a father working as an orderly at a mental institution. He made minimum wage, $3.35 an hour in 1981. At night, he studied in their basement apartment and used a cardboard box as his desk. He believed education was the only way to escape poverty. B was born in Ames, Iowa. How did you get to Georgia? And grew up in Augusta, Georgia, and graduated from a Georgia public high school. After she moved to Atlanta to attend Georgia State University, she started a local nonprofit to educate and empower young women. She spent a decade in Georgia public high schools where she learned how to organize with her community and demand change for her students. B made history when she was elected as the first Asian American Democratic woman to the Georgia General Assembly in House District 89. Y'all, let's stop and give her a round of applause for that. Now, this was a seat formerly held by Stacey Abrams. I think we all know who she is. At the Georgia State Capitol, B is a leading advocate for voting rights, public education, and criminal justice reform. B successfully overturned the exact match voter registration law and restored the right to vote for the 53,000 Georgians impacted by the policy. And I'm sure she'll speak more about that as we have our conversation this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, State Representative B. Wynn. Give her a round of applause, you all. All right. Well, again, you all, I'm so excited to have this discussion here this evening, and I'm excited about the men and women, the adults who are watching this on social media. You also pull out your pen and paper or open up your tablet or your devices. Make sure that you take notes because this is going to be an important discussion that we all need to hear and understand this evening. So let's begin, panel. You ready?
Ready.
All right, we're ready. All right, so first question I'm going to ask, and I'm going to start in the middle with Senator Jones. Now, I want you to talk about voting rights in Georgia and just some things that you have been a proponent of in terms of opening or expanding or fighting even against legislation that has been opposed that will suppress the vote here in Georgia.
Well, thank you, Pastor Lee May, for this opportunity to be a part of this event tonight, this empowerment forum. And I cannot thank the shepherd of this church, Dr. Cynthia L, for having the vision and the courage, by the way, to convene a meeting such as this. We are here for one reason, and that is to talk about voting rights, or should I say the lack of the voting rights that has been spreading with all of these particular legislation across this country. I've been in the General Assembly long enough to remember when, and my colleagues will share a little bit about this, when Georgia was the first state in the nation to introduce voter ID. I was a freshman legislator, and I did something at the time that was unthinkable, and that was to bring some shackles and chains into the Senate chamber. And ever since then, from that moment, though we didn't have the votes to stop the legislation, we have continued to fight against this legislation, and not just this legislation, but we all know it's been several other pieces of legislation that's been introduced since then. Chief of which is the one that was passed that the pastor of this church talked about, Senate Bill 202. Keep in mind now that this legislation has two purposes. One is to suppress the vote, and the second intent of this legislation that people don't talk about a lot is to oppress those who they don't want to vote. So when you think about fighting for voting rights, we may not have the votes in Georgia at least a decade ago. we do today. And I think it's incumbent on all of us to realize that we have to use every weapon in our arsenal, chief of which is education, chief of which is holding events like this where we can communicate with those out there in our communities about this secret playbook that the Republicans have been playing and using against us for a very, very long time. Except now it's not so secret, particularly with the failed presidency of a failed president. That playbook is now out in the open and we all can see it. So what's important is, what are we going to do about it? And I think it's important that we all, as I say, voting right is not just a human right, but it's a human might. So we have to use that power that we have to go out and ensure that we educate everybody in this community, that we register like my colleagues up here with me have been doing for a very long time. And thank you, Ms. Butler, for introducing me to Dr. Joseph Lowry, who I count as my mentor many, many years ago, who inspired me, who led the effort in the beginning, along with Martin and Maynard and all the other historical features, and not to mention Andy, and we can't forget John as well. And I'm talking about John Lewis. You all know who I'm talking about. In this effort to ensure that we have the right to vote. But once we vote, we have to elect people like my good friend sitting here to my left and enlarge our tent. So I am excited to be here, to have this opportunity to continue to drive home that this is more than just a human right. It's a human right and the power that we have as people of color that we must exercise. That's why we flipped the Senate in these United States.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, I think I forgot about the shackles, Senator. I did. I remember that clearly. And I don't think it's a coincidence now that when people refer to Senate Bill 202, we're calling it what? Jim Crow 2.0.
Absolutely.
That's no coincidence. You had vision then, even with the voter ID law, that of the kind of impact that it would have on particularly communities of color. So thank you for your vision and thank you for your fight. Representative Nguyen, you want to talk some about your legislative kind of track record and things that you've been focusing on where voting rights are concerned?
Yes, thank you so much for having me here. You know, I love the energy that you all have brought to this space. I think I want to bring Reverend Dr. Cynthia Hale to the General Assembly because we need some hope, faith, and truth. We need some truth down there. And very honored to be up here with my colleagues as well. I love Miss Helen Butler. I was talking about you yesterday, so Pastor Lee, you weren't the only one talking about her. And then Senator Jones, so good to be up here with you as well. So look, I think one important thing that has been brought up already is these efforts to suppress the right to vote are because Georgia built a broad-based coalition centering Black voters and bringing people to the table because we have shared values. And part of our shared values is preserving democracy and that fundamental right to vote. That is what we use to demand change. So it is not about one elected leader. It is not about one election cycle. It is about the preservation of democracy and our country as a whole. And as Democrats, I know, and nonpartisan voting rights organizers, I know we often align with voter expansion policies. We want to see things in Georgia like same-day voter registration, the ability to vote at any precinct, and ending these massive voter purges that our current Secretary of State and the previous one under Brian Kemp are using to roll voters off the roll. There are so many things that we could do to improve our right to vote, and instead we are going backward. Every single year that I've been in the Georgia General Assembly, some attempt to roll back the right to vote. And they know that when we organize, we are building community power. And certainly the church is one of those tenets of building power, which is why they keep trying to eliminate souls to the polls. So I want to take this moment to really share with everyone who's watching some of the changes that happened under Senate Bill 202, because it is important that when we have the opportunity to talk about what happened under this bill, that we share with our community, our family members, our neighbors, how this bill impacts your ability to vote, and to make sure that we are doing everything in our power to ensure that when you go and cast your ballot, it will be counted. So I want to just share some top lines that I think are important for us to remember. So if anybody is voting in a municipal election coming up on November 2nd, there are some deadlines specific to that, but there are some overall general changes. So one, the timeline to request an absentee ballot has shortened, and the timeline to receive one has also shortened. So if you are voting in any city elections November 2nd, you can request an application to vote by mail right now, and the last day to do that is October 22nd, and the first week that you will receive that ballot is October 11th. If you plan to vote by mail, there is also a different change that the Georgia legislature passed through. It's important to remember that we have been voting under Republican rules for a long time. So in 2020 when we won, in 2021 when we won, we were playing by their rules and their laws. And they were upset because we used vote by mail at a higher rate than Republicans did for the first time because we were living under a pandemic, which is still not over. Because of that, they changed the rules around absentee ballots, and one requirement is entering in either your driver's license or your state ID number. If you use other forms of identification, you have to make a copy of that and stick it in the mail, both when you apply to vote by mail and when you send your ballot in. We also know 3% of registered voters do not have a driver's license, which is a significant number. We also know that there has been a concerted effort to make it hard for people to obtain a driver's license, including shutting down DMVs. So all of this, again, decisions made with precision to make sure it's harder for people to vote. Now, I used a secure drop box last year. It was outdoors. I dropped my ballot off, and this is no longer the case. The drop boxes that we used in 2020 and 2021, they are now moved indoors. They're only available during early voting hours. That means if you work late, you cannot drive by and drop your ballot off. They are monitored by a person, and the way in which the law is written, they can use a law enforcement officer to monitor a voter drop box, which we know does not provide people comfort. The other thing is they are cut. Previously, we could drop our ballots off the Friday before the election, after 7 p.m., the Saturday, the Sunday, the Monday, the Tuesday. No longer the case. It ends as soon as early voting ends. Now, the drop boxes will also be severely reduced in terms of how many there are. There is a new law that says for every 100,000 registered voters, there's only one drop box. That means in places like Decatur, where we had double-digit drop boxes, we're going down to single. Yeah, exactly. And Fulton and Gwinnett and Cobb, we're literally removing a safe, effective tool to vote without any evidence of malfeasance, any evidence of voter fraud, none of those things. And the last thing I want to bring up is provisional ballot voting. Now, I was a poll monitor in Fulton County at C.T. Martin Recreation Center during the November election. That was also an early voting location. It makes sense that if a voting location is open for 3 weeks, there are folks who will show up on election day to cast their ballot. That day, over half of the voters that showed up were not in their correct voting precinct. They were able to vote provisionally because they were in the correct county, and at the end of the night, those ballots were cured. This is no longer the case. You will have to go to your voting precinct, even if you are in the right county. If you arrive anytime before 5 p.m., you cannot vote provisionally. When we look at the number of people who voted provisionally, it is mostly voters of color, because when we live in big counties like DeKalb, Fulton, Cobb, and they're consolidating and closing and moving voting locations and not giving enough time for voters to find out where they're going to go vote, it is very common to show up at the wrong precinct. And now they're taking away the ability for a voter to cast their ballot provisionally, even though they are still an eligible voter in that county. And so what we're looking at is they have been very strategic and smart about chipping away and eroding the right to vote and picking up any little margins of error that they can find so that they can change the outcome of an election.
That's good information. I learned from the late Albert E. Love. He taught me 3 things about voting. He said it's voter registration, voter education,
and voter mobilization.
And voter mobilization. See, Helen, we were students. We learned that. Voter education, voter registration, voter mobilization. Helen, as a part of the work that you do, you really play in all three of those fields. So Senator Jones and Representative Wynn have talked about kind of the legislative nuances of not just Senate Bill 202, but others. But now we get to the practicality for individual voters. Like, what are some things that we can do that you've been doing to make sure that people really get out and really are able to place their vote in a timely manner within the rules?
Well, good evening, and I'm so happy to be here with all this, my panelists, my fellow panelists and colleagues here. But thank you, Dr. Hale and Dr. Rice, for having this educational forum, because knowledge is power. So that is what is going to make a difference. And of course, as you said, I met you through the People's Agenda Tuesday meeting that we just finished today, 12 to 2, every day, every week. And I think we're the only statewide organization that holds a weekly meeting of that nature, that we try to empower people. And of course, Senator, you were very in love with Dr. Lowry and he with you. And so he was just, he had a vision along with the other civil rights leaders. So what we can do, and as we saw in 2020 and 2021, was that we turned out in record numbers. So numbers make a difference. We've got to continue that trend. We can't just say, oh, they're going to do what they want to do and stay at home. No, we've got to get out. We've been doing this. Dr. Lowry had a vision of a statewide organization, and I'm trying to carry out that legacy where we empower communities themselves. We have 7 offices across the state: Atlanta, Athens, Albany, Augusta, Macon, Savannah, and LaGrange, and we hope to expand to other areas. But the idea is to get people involved in the process. You can't just sit on the sidelines. Elected officials really are, and I have an HR background because I worked in corporate America before I came over here. So elected officials are your employees, right? You control them, not they control you. So when you have good employees, you get sure they're oriented, they do what you want them to do. When they veer off course, you kind of bring them back, coach them, train them a little bit more. But when they don't come back in, you have to get some new ones. So that's what we're trying to tell people out there. Don't be discouraged because the person that you wanted didn't get elected this time. Keep trucking, keep voting. That's what brings it on. But we, across the People's Agenda, what we do is we register people 365 days a year. I know the articles have said 95% of the people already voted. Well, out of 7 million people, or more, 10 million people in the state of Georgia, 95%, there's a large percentage that aren't. So we have to continue to get them registered to vote. But once we get them registered to vote, first we got to tell them how to vote, what's involved in the process, know what some of the terminology is. What is early voting? A lot of people don't even know what that means. What is absentee voting? That means you vote from the comfort of your house. So, you got to help people to understand the language and the terminology that is being used. And once we get them educated, we got to mobilize them. So People's Agenda, what we do is provide rides to the polls. We work with churches like Ray of Hope to use their vans to take people to the polls, whether it's souls to the polls. We've even done an absentee voting process with Salem and some other churches where you vote from the comfort of the pew using your absentee ballot process. So there are ways to get around some of these barriers, but you just have to know how to do that. And with those barriers, like making sure people, when I go out to register people to vote, I'm now buying portable copiers so people can copy their IDs, right there. If they want to actually submit their absentee ballot request, we can do a laptop or a tablet or something so that they can enter their information. A lot of the things that happened with 202 was trying to stop us from being able to help people. But guess what? Where there's a will, there's always a way, because God gave us knowledge to do that. So we're going to be able to do that. So we mobilize people, but we hold our elected officials accountable, right? We provide rides to the poll. We have a Ride to the Poll app. We have a Ride to the Poll website. It's called ridetothepoll.com. So, just download it in your app store, Android and iPhone. Request a ride to the poll. You can volunteer to be a driver to drive people to the poll. So in that app. But of course, we hold elected officials. We were down at the Capitol advocating for, the vote centers that B talked about that would allow people to vote anywhere in the county that you could be. Election day registration. We already have automatic voter registration only because we sued them. Because like Senator Jones said, when he put the shackles on, and I believe Alicia Morgan saying, ain't gonna let nobody turn me around in the well. Well, that didn't work. But guess what? The People's Agenda and other organizations, we sued. And we continue to sue. Exact Match, we sued. We were plaintiffs in that. We still have a part of Exact Match with the Citizenship Match that is out there now. We're suing right now. We have a suit against SB 202 and the barriers that it is putting in place. So we are holding people accountable. But I want people to know, if you show up and participate, they cannot put enough blocks in your way, because the numbers will make a difference. So look at the numbers. The record turnout that we had overcame the barriers that they put in place. We've always played by the playbook, but guess what? We also know how to make a way when the playbook puts stumbling blocks there, because we've done it all our lives, and so it's nothing new to us. So again, be engaged. Don't be discouraged. You've got to stay in this race with us.
Awesome. That is so good. Yeah, give them a hand. Give all three of them a hand clap, you all. Is there, and this is particularly for the elected officials, are there some resources available to assist people in just getting more information about on the voter education side? Are any resources that you all can think of right now? You don't have to answer right now, but I want you to be thoughtful about that, because this is the question that I hear, particularly for maybe that 5%, who may not be registered registered to vote. And y'all have heard this before. They gonna do whatever they want to anyway. Who is they? I don't know. My vote doesn't really count anyway. All these people, my one vote is not going to make a difference. And so one of the things, or here's the third one: I don't even know what I'm voting for. I don't even know what I'm voting. I don't know who the people are who are running, what they're about, what they've done good or bad, and all that. So just be thoughtful about any resources that are available, including your own, Helen, that is available for voter education. So understanding Senate Bill 202 and all the things that have happened here in Georgia, what are some things that can be done now looking forward to get around these suppressive tactics? We all know that Senate Bill 202, what was done in Georgia, was intended to provide greater obstacles of people going to vote. What are some things that we can do now that can get around those suppressive attempts, but also get more people out to vote? Any thoughts, you all? Senator?
Well, when you say what we can do now, all of us need to go and make sure that we're registered. We also need to understand that if you turn 18 by the day of election, those that are in high school, they can register to vote as well. And if we register people to vote, we cannot stop them from voting. There is a component of this Senate Bill 202 that deals with having the correct documentation. I think it's important that people know, those that are listening to us, that these IDs are free. You can get one from the state of Georgia. It doesn't cost you anything. So if you know someone, particularly those that are elderly, particularly those that are infirmed, I have a niece who has severe, from an accident, she is severely disabled. We have to be able to reach out to those in our community like her and ensure that she has the proper documentation, that her license hasn't expired, and that she's able to at least request, because in the state of Georgia, you have to complete an application to request an absentee ballot, and you can help with that. We can help people to request an absentee ballot, and that's important in groups like what my good friend over here, Helen Butler, and the People's Agenda are doing, and they've been doing for ages, by the way. Is always beneficial. You mentioned in the preface of your question, what can we do in terms of educating the public? And I think a vital position here in the state of Georgia is that position of Secretary of State. They have access to these websites. They put information out there on the websites. They make it easily. I know when we rolled out these new voting machines, they were responsible for training all of the different counties on how to use these machines. And one thing that I just want to mention is that we have one of our own who is a candidate,
I was wondering if
a
he's going
Democratic Party candidate, to be our next Secretary of State. And I know that Representative B. Wynn understands the importance of that position and the power it has in educating our public. So, my good friend, I am with you 100% on your efforts, and we need you in this office.
All
Thank
right.
you.
All right. Sounds like a layup. Representative Wynn, you have anything to share?
Yeah. Thank you so much, Senator. That means a lot. You know what? Both Senator and Ms. Helen Butler have mentioned the importance of voter education, voter engagement, and voter mobilization. But one thing I think that is critically important is we cannot continue to ask Black and brown organizers to out-organize voter suppression. Y'all have said this all night, that we know what the barriers are. We've been fighting against them all of our lives. And the people who came before us have been doing the same thing. And we cannot continue on this path where we ask Black Georgians, Black organizers, brown Georgians, brown organizers to carry the burden of making sure that people can vote and that their votes will count. And so when I think about what we can do, I cannot emphasize the importance of us making sure that we are letting Congress know that we have got to pass federal voting rights legislation.
Yes.
We sent Senator Ossoff and Senator Warnock to give the Senate the majority so that we could protect the right to vote. And now that the Senate has the majority, it is instrumental that they end the filibuster, even if they just want to carve it out for voting rights, so they can give us that protection. Because we are in a critical moment where the decisions that we make now are going to determine the outcome of our democracy indefinitely. And we may not have this opportunity next year. We may not have control of the House or the Senate. And so the time is now to pass Federal Voting Rights Act. And some of that, the new compromise that came out, the Freedom to Vote Act, does mitigate some of the harm that we see under Senate Bill 202, including the elections takeover provision where the state is trying to overexert their power to take over our local election boards, including ending use it or lose it voter purging. And so it is really important that we all contact Congress and let them know where we stand on that. The second thing is when we go to the polls, we cannot just show up for the presidential race and not vote all the way down ballot. We have to show up every single year and make sure that we go all the way down the ballot, because we are seeing the power of our state legislature. And in places like Georgia, Florida, Texas, it is not a good thing. And we are about to go into a brutal redistricting session. We are about to go into a brutal 2022 where they will try to do more things on voting rights, where they are going to try to ban critical race theory, where they are going to pass in a Texas-style abortion bill, where they are going to do nothing to improve the lives of Georgians. And those state legislatures are critically important. The third thing, we can give money to our voting rights group, like the Coalition for the People's Agenda, because litigation is so important in Georgia. The few advances that we have been able to make have been a result of lawsuits. And so giving your dollars to Ms. Helen Butler's group, Fair Fight, New Georgia Project, Asian Americans Advancing Justice, ACLU, those are the groups that are with us at the Capitol every single session, in committee with us, every single committee, and then doing the work aftermath to use the judicial system to like those results. And what we're looking at here is not just voter suppression, but the attempts to overturn the results of the election, the attempts voting on in 2022.
That Secretary of State position is, to me, we have to vote again for the U.S. Senate that Senator Reverend Raphael Warnock holds now. But right there next to those two, to me, is Secretary of State, because we need somebody in that office that can combat the evil that was done through Senate Bill 202 in trying to suppress the vote. So I'm saying this for all listeners, as Representative B. Wynn, and yes, she's invested in that seat, of course. But that is, I'm not invested because I'm not running, but I'm invested because I need to make sure that we have someone in that office that will protect this right of people to vote freely and fairly in our elections. Dr. Hale and I actually met with Senator Ossoff virtually today, and we told him to go tell Senator Manchin and whoever else, go try and get your Republican friends to vote for this voting election, these election laws. But if not, it's time to dump this filibuster, this Jim Crow era filibuster. Can we? Okay.
Yes.
Helen Butler, what are you hearing from the community where, all of this is concerned? You probably have your ear to the ground more than any of us because you are statewide. What are you hearing from the community relative to these election laws, these voting laws here in Georgia and across the country?
Well, a lot of people are aware of what has been going on, and the most egregious part of Jim Crow 2.0 is the takeover process, because it takes over every aspect of the election process, from voter registration to who gets counted, who gets the ballot, what days election will be held, and who certifies the end results. So this takeover process is the most egregious part of SB 202. And what I'm hearing from people there, they don't understand why can't we just get something passed for people? They're concerned about unemployment. A lot of people are being evicted right now. They're worried about their job coming back. If I go to a job, what kind of wage will I have? What kind of health care? People are dying because of this pandemic. They want legislators who will work for them on their behalf. That's why I'm saying to people, you've got to hold them accountable. They're your employees. If they can't get it right, keep voting till you get the ones that will do it right. And in fact, you may want to run for office yourself. So that's an option as well that we have to think about. A lot of people sitting on that sideline. Well, offer yourself to be an elected official. Because some people that got elected to the highest office weren't that smart. But anyway, again, you've got to be, you can be engaged in the process, even at a local level, where they're trying to take over your state board of elections. Go to those meetings, see what they're doing, stand up and talk to them about it. Be engaged in this process, know it. You talked about getting the documents that they need. Well, I just want to say, for a Georgia ID, even if it's expired, it's a Georgia driver's license, it's valid. So it doesn't matter. Now, other states, that's different. But Georgia, it's okay to be expired. But the idea is be prepared. we're going to be launching pretty soon something that we call the Green Book for voting. If you remember Civil Rights Days, the Green Book was a way for people to navigate where do I, in the days of segregation, which a lot of young people don't understand, but read your history. If I went to this city, where could I stay? Where could I get food? Well, we're going to be talking about everywhere what you'll need for voting, from 1, 2, 3 down to the end of what the machines look like. How do you get a candidate? Attend some candidates forums. We've been having one every Tuesday, 12 to 2. Join us. We've had Mayor Reed there. We've had Felicia Moore there. We had Antonio Brown today. We've had others from other parts of the state, public service commissions even coming in. So the idea is to get involved. There are lots of organizations. The League of Women Voters does a 411.org that has information about candidates. If you want to know about their records, Project Vote Smart, that has information about candidates across the country, no matter where you live, about their record, how they voted on issues, so you can get educated. I don't try to tell people who to vote for. I just give you the information, and you make the decision for yourself. But be engaged in that process. My voter page is everything you need to have. sos.ga.gov, but it starts off with mvp.sos.ga.gov. That's my voter page. It has everything you need to know about yourself. It has where you're registered, where your polling location is, how to get an absentee ballot, whether your absentee ballot has been accepted, whether it's been rejected, where it is, what's the status of it. It has who your current representatives are. You can click on that link and go to their pages and see what they've been doing for you if they haven't been to your neighborhood to tell you. It has where your municipal polling locations are. You can find out, you can get a sample ballot that will tell you personally who's going to be on your ballot. And as we've said, it's not just presidential. The most critical races are happening right there. Right now, the municipal elections, where all of your city mayors, your council people, your boards of education, some county commissions are up as well. So it's everyone. And all the other local races, you know, with the statewide races will be in 2022. And it's not only all constitutional officers, but you'll have judges, you have sheriffs, you'll have DAs, all those people that are impacted by the criminal justice system. Well, go vote for them. That's a way to get the right people. And like the people down in Brunswick did for Ahmaud Arbery, they actually got their DA out of office. And so this is things that you can do. So be encouraged, because if you participate and hold them accountable, elected officials are going to show up where the large number of people vote. By far none, because you have limited resources. And the other thing you can do is give money to good campaigns that will do what you want them to do and hold you accountable, even if it's $1. $1 helps. As I was saying, you know, Black people, there are 2 million Black people registered voters in Georgia alone. Okay, think if 2 million people gave $1 to an election campaign, right? That could elect anybody you want to elect, right?
That's right.
So again, be engaged in the process. Numbers all the way matter. And sometimes you also have to look at who's supporting these candidates, what corporations are giving the big dollars, because you may be contributing to your own demise by supporting that business that's contributing to these people that are suppressing your vote. So we got to look at things in a holistic approach.
That's good.
And so, like I said, be engaged. You got great leaders like Dr. Hale and Dr. Rice here that can help guide you as well at Ray of Hope and other places, other churches. I know Shiloh does a great job. There are so many great faith organizations, or just be engaged in your sorority, in your Masons, your Eastern Stars, whatever, your neighborhood NPU unit, your neighborhood unit, your block. Get everybody on your block educated and voting. So that will make a difference.
Helen, you are amazing. and if you haven't seen how amazing I've seen her, you've seen it this evening. You are amazing. That is, y'all, it is so much information that she's given. And I will say this, I'm going to just be frank. Take off your Black Lives Matter t-shirt if you don't go vote. Where's the camera? Right here.
Yes,
Take off your Black Lives Matter t-shirt if you don't go vote. Because all of the things that people who have been out in the street protesting against injustices with the law enforcement entities, protesting against things that are going on in government and that is adversely affecting people of color, primarily Black people, those are issues that can be changed through government, through the process of government, through one of the three branches. Something can be done to offset those changes. We have a question that came up in the chat that anyone can answer. It says, can we challenge Senate Bill 202 in the Supreme Court? Anybody want to take that?
Well, the answer is that bill has already been challenged by several different groups, by the way.
Yeah.
And there are so many different aspects of this bill that you can challenge a particular aspect of it and try and get that part of the bill overturned. My good friend was correct when she said the insidious part about this bill is giving that power to this Secretary of State to remove those elected officials at the county level. It's important that we all understand that the counties are the ones who preside over these elections.
Yeah.
And just recently, the current Secretary of State was seeking to remove the election official in Fulton County.
Yeah.
Why? Why is that? Think about it. Fulton County, there's more people of color that vote in Fulton County than in these other counties around. And he tipped his hand when the county removed that election official, put someone in there that he didn't agree with, and what did he say? Well, she shouldn't be there because she's been affiliated with a certain group.
Yeah.
Exactly.
She's friends with a certain body.
So they've already tipped their hand. That's why I say to you that the Republicans are no longer hiding their playbook. It's right in front of us in clear view, and it's up to us to make sure that we vote. And I can tell you this, you cannot be turned away from the polls if you register to vote and if you have an ID to vote. There's no way you can be turned away. I don't care what they do in this legislation, this oppressive and suppressive legislation, you will still be allowed to vote. They are operating on the margins here. And the margins, and one of my colleagues mentioned 3% may not have a particular ID. It's a lot more than that. Because think about it, in our community, we have a lot of people of color that's been involved in the criminal justice system. It's important for us to know that if you've been convicted of a felon, you can still vote in Georgia, even if you're on parole. And the way you do that is that you can get a certificate we passed legislation about 3 years ago that if you serve more than 3 years of your parole, because a lot of judges in this state would give you 2 years to serve and 20 years on parole. Right. But after 3 years, you can terminate that parole if you haven't reoffended, and you can have your voting rights restored. That's the kind of information that we need to make sure that everyone out here in the community understands. And I say again, register to vote and make sure you have the proper ID. I don't care what they put in this suppressive legislation. They cannot stop you from voting.
That's good. That's good. Here's another question that came up in the chat. Why can't Joe Biden sign an executive order to make the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act law? I think this is just a civics lesson if someone wants to jump in and just say why.
Well, to me, I would rather have a law in place than an executive order, because the executive order is short term. A law would be long term. And right now, they have the power to do that. All they have to do is do away with the filibuster and carve out some way of doing that. And Representative Jim Clyburn has given them a way out a long time ago. They just haven't acted on it. And we've got to put pressure on Congress to act and to do away with the filibuster and to get President Biden make enough noise. A lot of people have been going to jail in D.C. about voting rights. I know Melanie Campbell with the Black Women's Roundtable, we were in D.C. protesting, letting President Biden know we want to do away with that because the time is now. This is our Selma moment. This is our Selma moment. And we've got to do everything like the people who did on Bloody Sunday, like the people who marched from Selma, to Montgomery. We've got to be out there putting it forward to tell Congress and the president, get rid of the filibuster.
Amen.
And pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act and pass the Freedom to Vote Act and pass D.C. statehood.
All right,
and people in Georgia are saying,
and you're not even from D.C.
Why should I do D.C.? Because you get 2 more senators. Okay?
That look like us.
Yes. And
All
so,
right.
so learn it.
Yeah.
Be engaged in it. We need the triple 3. Not just the 1. We need the 3.
Okay.
If
Well,
I
that's
can,
good, Helen. That's good. Go ahead, B.
I just wanted to add something as Ms. Helen Butler was speaking about the importance of passing all 3 federal pieces. I did want to bring up redistricting because federal voting rights would protect us from this partisan gerrymandering that we are seeing in states like Georgia. We do not have an independent redistricting committee. The power and party, those are the people who draw the maps. And we know as we head into redistricting this fall, whenever that might be, the speaker said, when the frost is on the pumpkins. Senator, do you know when the frost is on the pumpkins?
First week of November.
First week of November. And the maps, we have not seen them, and we know that they will do everything in their power to maintain control of the legislature. And so it is also critical, not just for voting rights and combating voter suppression, it is important for redistricting that we pass the Federal Voting Rights Act.
Absolutely. There's so much, you all. And for those who are watching, this may seem like a lot, like we're, like you're drinking from a fire hydrant. And we understand if this is a little bit difficult for you. But the premise to all of this is we want you to exercise your right to vote. I don't care what laws are put in place, what hindrances, what suppressive laws are put in place. We want you to take advantage of it. And not only you, but some of your kinfolk, your cousins and aunts and uncles and neighbors who I hate for you to be profiling, but just still ask the question. Just ask the question.
Yes.
Are you registered to vote? And are you voting? Okay, are you registered to vote and are you voting? And if it's no on any one of those questions, we want you to partner with them. Take their hand and help them. You don't have to know all the information. It's just like with evangelism, Pastor. You try and get your members to evangelize, and we don't want you to have to know every verse of the Bible and all of that, but we'll help you along. We'll hold your hand along with that. Y'all, our time is coming to an end, and I want to give all 3 of you all an opportunity to just kind of give us a closing statement relative to voting rights in this nation. Why don't I start with Senator Jones, and then we'll go to Helen Butler, and then we'll end with State Representative Bewin.
But first, thank you to my good friend, Pastor Lee May, and of course, again, the shepherd of this church, the Reverend Dr. Cynthia Hale. And I believe we should have more of these kind of symposiums so that we can actually spend some time and educate the public, because one of the questions was, where did they get the information from? Well, as you can tell, there's a lot of resources up here. And I just want to remind people that, to me, voting rights is more than a human right. It's a human might. It's the power that we have. And I would encourage those that are listening out there in the audiences today to exercise that power that you have. We did it last year when we flipped the Senate, it's been mentioned. We've done it before, and we can do it again. And yes, the Republicans across this country has put up a whole bunch of smoke and mirrors out there to try and discourage us and even suppress our vote. But I don't want anyone to be discouraged by any of those tactics. Seriously. In the middle of this pandemic, we had record voting in our community. I happen to preside in the county, Henry County, though I represent both DeKalb and Henry. It was the #1 county in the nation in terms of the percent increase in vote for the presidential election. And we did it by communicating virtually with each other, by having virtual seminars, and we need to continue this format. So to your leader of this church, thank you again, Dr. Hale, for your vision, for your passion about voting. And I just hope and pray that all of us, the sounds of our voices, understand the importance, as we do up here, of encouraging people to vote.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. Helen.
Again, thank you so much, Ray of Hope family. I feel like I'm a part of this church anyway. So thank you, Pastor Hale and Pastor Rice. And of course, Lee, thank you so much too. And of course, my distinguished colleagues here. All I can say is be engaged. Stay engaged. Lee said there are a lot of resources for you. Join the People's Agenda. You can just come work with us. We'll educate you. We do a lot of training. Go to our website, www.thepeoplesagenda.org. Enter your name and we'll get in contact with you. We want you to be engaged in this process. Hold your employees accountable. They work for you. You don't work for them. They work for you. Make them do what they're supposed to do for you and your community. With this pandemic, with us having an economic crisis in our neighborhoods, we need to make sure we get the right elected officials. We're going to help educate you. We're going to give you the information. If we don't know it, we'll find out the information for you and make sure you understand the process. We even can get you access to a voting machine so you can learn how to use it. We're going to make sure you know what to do, how to do it, and when to do it. So be engaged.
And I'm a living testament of the Georgia Coalition for the People's Agenda. When I walked through those doors the first time, had no thought, no interest, not even an understanding about elected politics. And something clicked in me, and I got the bright idea to run for office. And literally, Joseph Lowry, Reverend Lowry, was one of the first people to endorse me. And the joke is, he endorsed me before my wife did. And I'm serious about that. She's watching this. You know it's true. Okay, Representative Wynn, you're next.
Thank you again for having me here tonight. It's just been really great to sit here and, just soak in the spirit of the message here and be allied with people who are fighting for the right to vote. I'm going to first give you a phone number that I think is important. So it is 1-888-730-5816. That is the Democratic Party of Georgia Voter Protection Hotline. They have fielded tens of thousands of calls, and you can call them for anything, no matter what party you're affiliated with. If you spill something on your ballot and you need to know what to do, if you don't get your ballot and you need to know what to do, call them. And they have 7 different languages, and this is an investment that the party has made for the first time because we recognize the importance of diversity in the state of Georgia, and we need to meet voters where they are. The second thing I want to say is something that Ms. Helen Butler brought up earlier. When we are talking about the right to vote, I've knocked on tens of thousands of doors in my district, outside of my district, for myself, for Stacey Abrams, for Biden, for Ossoff, for Warnock. And sometimes I do meet voters who say, why should I vote? My life has not changed. No matter who gets elected, I don't see the difference. But I think something extremely powerful that Ms. Helen Butler brought up was Brunswick, this town in South Georgia, the center of the storm where the world was watching as 3 white supremacists murdered Ahmaud Arbery when he was out for a run. And it caused the type of pain here in Georgia, throughout our state, and a ripple effect across our country, where people said, no more, enough. We are tired, and we cannot let this happen again. And we know it continues to happen. But what Brunswick did, Brunswick in Glenn County, Georgia, a primarily Republican county, they said, we are going to get rid of the DA who refused to prosecute this murder. And they did. And that is the power of voting. Now, the last thing I'll say is Senator Jones and I and Ms. Helen Butler, we are going to continue to fight with y'all because we know that the fight is not over, that Republicans will do more to make it harder to vote. We will be fighting during our redistricting session, during our legislative session, during our 2022 races. And I do want to just share with y'all one small thing. I would not be running for Secretary of State had Republicans not decided to make elections partisan. I was in the center of the storm last year when they brought Trump's legal team and Rudy Giuliani into our committee meeting, subjecting us to hours of misinformation, lies, and conspiracy theories. And when I spoke up and I used facts and I told the truth, they put my address on a right-wing gun site and how to make a safety plan. And that is what is happening to our election workers who are just trying to do their jobs. That is happening to elected officials in the state of Georgia and across the country for standing up for the truth and for standing up for the people. And we got to say, no more, not on our watch. And so I'm committed in that fight with Senator Jones and Ms. Helen Butler and all of y'all. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Y'all have done an amazing job providing so much relevant information, your passion behind your speech. My prayer is that people who have been watching this will get excited right along with you and will decide not only to take advantage of their right to vote, but also to come alongside someone else and walk them along down the road to exercise their right to vote as well. Remember, I started off this by saying elections are not about preserving the power of politicians, but elections are about protecting the power of the people. And if we continue to remember that, I believe that we can really make a real difference, one person at a time, one church at a time, one community at a time, one state at a time, one nation at a time. Y'all, thank you for watching this legislative forum. Thank you again, Ray of Hope Christian Church, for providing this venue as well. And thank you to our great leader, Dr. Cynthia L. Hale, for providing this platform for such great information to go forward. With that, as if I was in politics still, I will now yield the floor. Dr. Hill, is all up to you.
Thank you. Pastor Lee May, you are incredible. Nobody could have led us in this discussion like you have. You are my friend and have been for a long time, and I am grateful that we have been able to work closely for what we really believe in. You know, we didn't just get into this because we're pastors. We were activists before we became street soldiers, you understand?
Yes.
And so I'm excited. Helen Butler, there is no one like you.
Thank you, Doctor.
This is, all of you were fire tonight. And you brought the experience that you have, the passion, the joy of the work that you have, even under fire. Senator Jones, thank you for sharing with us the wisdom. Thank you for the fact that you understand how important the fight is. Even on the floor, you let that fire show. And Representative B, Wynn, wow. Well, you know, we're supposed to be nonpartisan, but Ray of Hope knows I know how to give signals. About who's supposed to be elected, I know how to give signals. We are with you, and we thank you for sharing with us. You know, I wish I could take credit for all of this. Everybody kept thanking me for the vision and everything, and indeed it has been my vision. But again, I really need to say thank you to the chair of our social justice ministry, Mary Margaret Hill. Mary Margaret. And she is beautifully assisted by Nanika. We thank God for Nanika Cragwell and the Minister of Outreach, Dr. Kenny Rice, Winford Kenny Rice. We're also glad for Reverend Stevens and the spoken word prayer tonight. Beautiful. And for Reverend Ryland Harris, who is our Minister of Worship and the Arts. And Commissioner Johnson has left, but let me just apologize. I called him Commissioner Larry Jones. You know how long we've been working together, but I forgot. I don't know where that came from. But anyway, I want to thank all of the members of the Ray of Hope staff who have done an incredible job to help us make this possible. Erica, who is my executive assistant, but is also the marketing person, and she just gets the information out and does other wonderful things to help us. And of course, the media team, the music ministry, and indeed everyone who participated. Thank you so much. Thank you for being with us tonight. Now you know that it's not over, and we continue. We're not just about an event. This is going to continue. We've got to do education. We've got to do registration. We've got to do identification. We've got to do mobilization and get people out to vote. And yes, ma'am, we will be working with the people's agenda. Yes, ma'am. Put us down. You are a part of the Ray, and we're a part of you. Now to him who is able to do exceedingly abundantly more than we can ask for or imagine, according to his mighty power that is at work within us. To him be glory in the church and in the world, forever and ever and ever. Amen. God bless you. I love you.